My wife's family lied about a tragedy to test my loyalty, so I took them to court, ended the marriage, and left them desperate for closure. I'm a 32-year-old man, and I've been married to my wife, who's 29, for 3 years. We met through mutual friends, clicked right away, and for the first couple of years, everything just felt easy. We had different upbringings. Mine was pretty average, nothing flashy. But we shared the same values, laughed at the same dumb movies, liked the same quiet weekends. I work in education, not the kind of job that brings in big money, but I love it. She always said she admired that. Her family, though, that was a different story. From the start, they never really accepted me. Her parents are wealthy, polished, the kind of people who measure worth by last names and where you summer. They'd smile in public, but in private, it was clear I wasn't what they'd imagined for their daughter. Her father was the worst. He'd make these dry jokes about public school boys and blue-collar weddings, always with that half smirk, like he knew I couldn't call him out on it without making things awkward for her. I didn't come from money, but I came with good intentions. That didn't matter to them. They rarely invited me to family events unless she pushed. Even then, the energy was always cold, like I'd wandered into a country club without a membership. Still, I didn't want to be the reason she cut off her family, so I smiled, kept my head down, and tried to earn their respect quietly. About a month before everything fell apart, things started shifting between us. At first, it was small. She was on her phone more but kept it face down. She'd space out in the middle of conversations, then brush it off as stress from work. I didn't push. I should have, but I figured everyone goes through phases, and she'd open up when she was ready. Then she said she needed to visit her parents for a few days. Alone, that part caught me off guard. She'd never done that in 3 years of marriage. She usually couldn't stand being at their place for long without me, since they argued constantly behind closed doors. But she insisted this time would be quick, and said she just needed a change of scenery. She packed light and left on a Thursday morning. She gave me a hug at the door. Not a quick one, but not a tight one either. More like the kind you give someone you think you won't see for a while but don't want to admit it yet. After that, she disappeared. I texted the first night, just a quick hope you got there safe. No reply. Called, straight to voicemail. I figured maybe she was tired or forgot her charger. But then the next day passed, and the next. Her phone never turned back on. I messaged her sister, her mom, even her cousin. No one gave a straight answer. They all said some version of she needs space, like they were reading off a script. By day 3, I was calling every hour. Nothing. I tried her work too. They said she'd taken personal leave. No one had heard from her. That's when I drove to her parents' house. Her father met me at the door and told me I was being dramatic. He said she was fine, just needed a break from everything, and I should respect that. I filed a missing person report on the drive home. The officer who took it seemed concerned, but said there wasn't much they could do since she'd left voluntarily. Still, they noted it, said they'd contact me if anything turned up. 4 days later, her mother called. I picked up right away. Her voice was shaking. She said my wife had died, car accident. Said it happened late at night out near their house, and that she was gone, just like that. I froze. I couldn't even process it, but something didn't sit right. When I asked where it happened and where she was taken, her mother just sobbed and said she didn't have the details yet, said they were too upset to think straight. But when I called the hospital she named, they said no one by that name had been admitted, no accident matching that time or location, nothing. I tried the county office to ask about a death certificate. They said there wasn't one filed, no obituary showed up online either. I called her father, no answer. I texted, nothing. Her sister blocked me. I even checked with mutual friends to see if they'd heard anything. They hadn't. 2 days after the accident, I heard through one of her coworkers that the family held a private memorial service. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told where or when it happened. When I called again to try and ask, this time using a different number, her mother picked up, said it was only for close family, and hung up. That's when I knew something was wrong, really wrong. I started writing everything down, every message, every call, every weird interaction. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but I needed a trail. With the little money I had saved, I hired a private investigator. I gave him everything, names, addresses, timelines, even her last known location. He said he'd seen a few situations like this before. Not common, but not impossible either. 2 weeks later, he emailed me a photo. It was her, alive, walking into a restaurant near the beach, sunglasses on, hair tied back, not alone. Her sister was with her, and her father. They looked relaxed, like nothing had happened, like there was never a car crash, no obituary, no tearful phone call about a fatal accident. She was alive, and they knew. They all knew. The photo was still open on my laptop when my brother came over. He didn't knock, just let himself in, saw me on the floor in the hallway and sat beside me without saying anything. I hadn't moved for almost an hour, couldn't. I dropped the phone when I got the email. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and my chest felt like it was caving in. He helped me up, poured water, stayed the night, no questions, just made sure I was breathing. The next morning, I didn't go to her family. I didn't send the photo to anyone. I didn't post it or print it or forward it. I saved it in 2 places and called the investigator instead. He said he'd stay on her for another week and keep logging everything. No surprises, no rush. He just asked for permission to keep digging. I told him yes. Over the next few days, he sent photos, time-stamped, geotagged, everything documented. My wife was alive, well, and spending her time at a waterfront property just a few hours from where we lived. Her parents owned the place. She wasn't hiding in another country. She wasn't in therapy. She wasn't recovering from trauma. She was tan. She was smiling. She wore dresses I'd never seen before and walked barefoot across wood decks with her sister and father close behind. They drank cocktails, went shopping in nearby towns, even took a yacht out twice. The investigator had photos from every angle. It was impossible to deny. I looked through our shared bank account to see if she'd touched anything. Not a single dollar was missing. But when I talked to the lawyer who helped us set up that account after marriage, he pulled up a record showing she had her name quietly removed from the account just days before she left. She wasn't taking money. She was leaving her connection to it behind. She'd been moved into a private family trust, something her father managed through his own advisor. The lawyer looked at me like I was lying when I told him she was supposed to be dead. A week later, I went to her father's office. It wasn't a planned meeting. I walked in with a copy of the photo, asked the front desk to call him down. They didn't. 2 security guards appeared instead and asked me to leave. I tried to speak calmly. One of them grabbed my arm, the other opened the main doors and motioned me out. I didn't fight back, didn't scream, just left the photo at the reception desk before I was walked out and told not to return. That night, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was just one sentence, "Now we know your true colors." It came from her father. I didn't reply, just stared at the screen, wondering what true colors even meant. I hadn't shouted, I hadn't posted anything, I hadn't gone to the press or the police. I wasn't even trying to hurt anyone. I just wanted the truth, and they were still playing games. I tried calling 2 of her oldest friends from college. They were both polite but distant. One said she'd heard my wife had gone overseas for mental health treatment. The other said she was told not to contact me because I wasn't coping well. I asked if they believed she was dead. Neither gave a clear answer. They just hung up, then blocked my number. That made 3 people who had now cut me off without explanation. The lawyer I spoke to after that listened carefully and wrote everything down. When I explained how she disappeared, how her family declared her dead, how there was no obituary or death certificate, his pen stopped moving. He said it sounded like a combination of emotional abuse and fraud. I asked if it was abandonment. He said it was worse than that. He asked if I still had the photos. I emailed them over. I didn't go back to work. I used up all my leave days and took the rest unpaid. My boss said he understood, but I could tell he didn't know what to make of it. He didn't ask for details, just told me to take care of things and come back when I was ready. The only person I opened up to fully was my therapist. I'd seen her on and off for a year already, just maintenance check-ins. This time was different. She listened, nodded, then told me I was experiencing ambiguous loss. It's what happens when someone is gone but not dead, or dead but not gone. She said it was one of the hardest types of grief to process, because you don't get closure, you get questions that never get answered. Then, finally, a call came through. It was her. Her name lit up on my phone like nothing had ever happened. She sounded normal, calm, no apology, no panic, just picked up where she left off, like we'd spoken yesterday. She said she had done what she needed to do, that the past few weeks were a test, that she had to know if I'd stay loyal even if I believed she was dead. She called it an experiment. She said she had no regrets. I didn't yell, didn't ask why, didn't say anything. I just ended the call and walked to the sink. Then I threw up. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that call. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice again, flat, steady, like she was reading off a script. She spoke like it was all logical, like there was nothing wrong with what she'd done, like she expected a thank you. She tried calling again the next day, and the one after that. I never answered. I sent one text, just one sentence, "Do not contact me again." Then I blocked her number. That was the last time I gave her access to me. A few days later, her sister emailed. The message was long, emotional, and full of contradictions. She called it a family-led loyalty test, said they'd all been worried I wasn't really invested in the marriage, that I might leave if things ever got hard, that they had to know how I'd react in a crisis. She said they'd all been part of it, her parents, even their family lawyer. They viewed it as a controlled social experiment, their words. She explained more than I expected. The car accident was fake from the start. They created fake paperwork and paid a retired nurse to pose as an independent caregiver, answering my call, claiming she was relaying updates on behalf of a private clinic. They mocked up a fake incident report and gave me a number, supposedly tied to a responding officer, but it was just a burner phone with a pre-written script. Every step was planned, coordinated, designed to simulate loss without actually harming anyone. She said I passed, that I didn't cheat, that I didn't run, that I waited, filed reports, stayed loyal. She said I should feel proud. I didn't reply. I called the same investigator and asked him to find out if anything else had been staged, any legal documents filed, statements, or falsified emails in my name. He said he'd get started. 2 days later, I met the sister in person. She chose a quiet cafe near a university campus, broad windows, middle of the afternoon, public but not busy. She wore sunglasses and a hoodie, sat with her back to the door. She looked nervous. I brought a folder with me but didn't open it. She apologized again in person, said their father never trusted me, and that the entire family believed I was only in it for money or status. She said the plan had been in the works for over a year. I asked if she knew what they told me, that her sister was dead, that I'd grieved, that I couldn't eat or sleep or breathe for days. She said I was supposed to snap by then. She said they wanted to see if I'd go out drinking or start messaging old girlfriends or fall apart at work. They wanted proof. That was her word. I slammed my hand on the table and stood up. People turned. I walked out. The lawyer I'd spoken to earlier reviewed everything again. He said we were in a gray area legally. Emotional abuse was real, but proving intent and damages would be tricky. There was no written confession, no public record of harm, and since they hadn't stolen money or property, it wasn't financial fraud. He said we might have a case, but only if we documented everything with precision, dates, names, direct impact on health, finances, and career. I told him to start drawing up divorce paperwork quietly. I didn't want her or her family to know what I was doing until it was already moving. I changed the locks at home the same day, called every utility company and removed her name from the accounts, canceled the shared streaming platforms, unlinked every device, ordered a new credit card, and rerouted all bank mail to a different address. Then I sent 3 letters, one to her, one to her father, and one to her mother. Cease and desist notices, no contact, no visits, no involvement in any part of my life going forward. My lawyer mailed the originals and emailed backup copies. That's when the backlash started. Mutual friends started texting, a few awkward messages, some polite check-ins. One even asked if I was okay mentally and mentioned that my wife's family had said I was going through a paranoid breakdown. They were planting the story that I was unstable, overreacting, making things up. I didn't respond to any of it, just saved the messages and moved on. One friend, an old roommate, came by in person. He said he didn't know what to believe anymore. He'd heard one thing from them, another from me. I showed him the photos, the private investigator's report, the timeline. He left after 15 minutes and didn't say much, but he texted later to say he'd cut ties with them. At my next therapy appointment, I brought the email from the sister and the recording of our cafe meeting. My therapist listened to all of it. She told me what I was dealing with wasn't just manipulation, it was something called malignant narcissism, where a person or group justifies abuse by painting it as a lesson. She said my wife's family was locked into a groupthink mentality where they fed each other's beliefs until nothing else mattered. She told me to start documenting everything in writing, every memory, every moment, every document, not just for therapy, but for legal purposes. The last message I ever got from my wife came that same week. A text from an unknown number. It said, "You would have cheated if I had been gone longer. You're not mad because it was wrong. You're mad because you got caught caring." I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer and blocked the number. That was the last time I heard from her. It was a Saturday afternoon when she showed up. No warning, no text, nothing. I opened the door, expecting a delivery, and there she was, standing like it was any other weekend, sunglasses on, bouquet in hand, smiling like this was normal. She didn't even wait for an invitation, just lifted the flowers and said something casual, like we were still married, like nothing had happened. I didn't let her in. I stepped into the doorway, blocking it with my body. She didn't move, just said the same thing she did in the text. You passed. That's all that matters, like it was a game, like she was proud of me. She took off her sunglasses and tilted her head, waiting. I told her to leave. She laughed, said I was always dramatic, said she knew I'd never actually call the police. That's when I reached for my phone. She rolled her eyes but didn't push further. Then she said she was ready to come home, not asked to come back, ready to, like the whole thing was a temporary break, a challenge I'd completed. She pulled out her old apartment key and tried it. The deadbolt didn't budge. I'd changed the locks 2 weeks earlier. She looked confused at first, then annoyed. Before she could say anything else, I asked her plainly, "Are you admitting your family planned all of it? Every step, the phone calls, the car accident story, the fake hospital?" She nodded, didn't even hesitate, said, "Yes, all of it." What she didn't realize was that the security camera above my door had a built-in microphone. The entire exchange, her voice, her tone, the confession, got recorded. My lawyer downloaded the footage the next morning, time-stamped and labeled. He said it was the first piece of real leverage we had. She walked off after that, didn't slam anything, didn't yell, just left, like she'd come for groceries and forgot something. But a few hours later, someone else knocked. Her father and her sister stood outside, both dressed like they'd come from church. Her father called through the door, asking to talk like civilized people. I didn't respond. They stood there for almost 10 minutes before leaving. First thing the next morning, I sent the audio recording to my lawyer. He started drafting a formal legal complaint for emotional distress, said we'd have to build a case over time, but the confession gave us a real starting point. Her family emailed 2 days later. They wanted mediation, said they'd hire a neutral third party and sit down like adults to clear the air. I refused, told my lawyer to respond directly. I wasn't interested in their theater, not after everything they'd done. That same week, she emailed about property, said she wanted a few sentimental things from the apartment, a painting from our hallway, a Dutch oven her aunt had gifted us, a set of knives she brought from her college days. I didn't reply, my lawyer did, told her to send a list through legal channels, nothing more. I also noticed a few letters missing from the shared mailbox in the lobby, bank statements, a tax form, even a medical invoice. I had a gut feeling her family still had a spare key. I went to the post office the next morning and had the lock changed, picked up all mail in person for the next 2 weeks, just in case. Then her mother sent a handwritten letter, no envelope, delivered by a private courier in a black suit. The note said the test was necessary to maintain appearances in their social circle, that trust had to be proven, that I should feel honored for having passed. My therapist and I read the letter together. She helped me file it in the timeline we've been building. A document with dates, screenshots, transcripts, letters, anything with proof. She said it was important to keep the facts straight, especially when gaslighting is involved. When lies get repeated, it's easy to forget the truth. A couple we used to double date with stopped replying to my messages. I saw their photos pop up in a group dinner hosted by my wife's sister. I didn't reach out again, just crossed their names off a list I'd been keeping. Not a revenge list, just a record of who stood where. The final step that week came from my lawyer. He issued an official notice, no further contact from my wife or any member of her family unless it came through legal counsel. Any calls, texts, visits, or backdoor messages would be treated as harassment. The notice was mailed and emailed, with receipt confirmation attached. It was the first week in over a month where no one knocked, no one called, no one showed up pretending to fix things. The silence felt strange. Not peaceful, just different, like the start of something else. A white envelope showed up in my mailbox midweek, thick, heavy, with gold trim and embossed lettering. It wasn't addressed by hand, it had been printed, like a wedding invitation. Inside was a folded card, titled Reconciliation Dinner. Her parents were hosting, a formal please reply was requested, date, time, dress code. Everything laid out like a celebration. The wording was strange. It didn't mention anything she or her family had done. Instead, it called her re-entry into life a transition phase and asked me to remain gracious about the trauma I was made to endure, like it had just happened to me, like they weren't the ones who caused it. The back of the card had a quote about resilience and love overcoming misunderstandings. Not grief, not betrayal, misunderstandings. That night, I found the message she sent during the whole fake death act, the one where she said I would have cheated if she'd stayed gone longer. I didn't delete it. I kept it archived. Reading it again reminded me who I was really dealing with. I sent a copy of the invitation to my lawyer. He told me not to respond, no attendance, no contact, just documentation. Every card, every letter, every attempt at outreach, they all counted as evidence. He added the dinner invitation to the file. The next morning, another delivery came, a box, larger, heavier. Inside was our wedding photo album. I hadn't seen it in over a year. Along with it was a handwritten letter from her, folded neatly in pink stationery and labeled A New Beginning. In the letter, she said she hoped I'd look past the method and focus on the love behind the idea. She called it bold, unorthodox, claimed it was the only way to prove what she called emotional permanence. She didn't apologize, just repeated the same excuse. If it had been fake but failed, I would have proven I was unfaithful. She called it a necessary risk. I took the letter and the invitation and burned them in my backyard fire pit. I kept the photo album, didn't open it again, just sealed it in a box and placed it in the closet with the rest of the documents I was keeping. At my next session, my therapist read the letter and looked angrier than I'd ever seen her. She didn't raise her voice, didn't curse, just sat back in her chair and said, "This goes beyond dysfunction. This is sadism dressed up as tradition." She asked if I wanted to move forward with trauma documentation in case we needed to pursue deeper legal options later. I said yes. She printed out forms to help with memory logs. The same day, on my way out of her office, I saw my wife standing by the far corner of the parking lot. She wasn't hiding. She was standing near my car, arms crossed, red-eyed. As soon as I unlocked the door, she walked toward me, crying, hands out, like she expected a hug or a breakdown. I told her she was violating legal boundaries and that I was informing my attorney immediately. She didn't argue, just stared at me for a few seconds, then got in her car and drove off. My lawyer sent her a final warning through official channels that same night. This time, it included a clear ultimatum. Either she signed the divorce paperwork within 30 days, or I would file and move forward without her consent. She would be notified only through legal routes. Any attempt to meet, call, or write again would be treated as harassment. She didn't sign. Instead, she replied with a counteroffer through her lawyer. She would only sign if I agreed to meet her one last time, alone, no lawyers, no recording, just the two of us. Her lawyer claimed she had important emotional context to give before she could reach closure. I said no. I sent my response through my attorney. This was never about emotional closure. It was always about control. There would be no more personal meetings, no more conversations outside legal boundaries. She had made her choices. That weekend, her sister left a voicemail on a friend's phone and asked them to pass it along. It ended up getting forwarded to me. In it, she called me vindictive, said I was ruining their family's name, said I had made something symbolic and beautiful into something bitter and embarrassing. I sent the voicemail to my lawyer, and he had it transcribed and dated for records. After that, I updated everything, changed all my passwords again, bought a new security system, installed an outdoor camera facing the front walk, and a smart doorbell with two-way audio and cloud storage. I also called my building's management and requested they deny access to anyone claiming to be my spouse or in-law unless previously approved in writing. Then I went to my lawyer's office and signed the final divorce filing. It was submitted the next day. She didn't find out from me. She found out from court delivery, just like she wanted. No personal contact, everything legal, everything clean. And still, the silence that followed didn't feel like peace. It just felt like the part where you wait to see what comes next. The email from my lawyer came early Monday morning. Her family's legal team had filed a response to the emotional distress claim. Their defense, that the entire sequence of events was a structured relationship test, a form of immersive psychological evaluation. They claimed it was never meant to harm, only to deepen emotional insight. One lawyer even called it immersive relational dynamics, a term that made the judge raise an eyebrow. By midweek, I started hearing the effects in real life. Two mutual acquaintances, people I hadn't spoken to in months, started repeating strange phrases. They were just trying to test love. It was unconventional but not malicious. They hadn't heard this from me. Her family was clearly controlling the narrative, framing it like an experimental romantic trial that I'd simply misunderstood. Then the notes started. They showed up in my mailbox, never signed, always folded neatly, written in blue ink. The first one just said, "You've made your point." Another came 2 days later. "Now let's show them you're the better man." The handwriting looked familiar. I compared it to the letter her sister had hand-delivered weeks earlier. My lawyer did the same. He believed it was a match. We added it to the evidence packet. That same week, my landlord reached out. Someone had called the property management office, asking detailed questions about my lease, length of stay, renewal dates, forwarding addresses. They claimed to be my relative. The manager didn't share anything but logged the incident. I filed a report. My lawyer added impersonation to the growing list. We started building a formal timeline, not just of emotional abuse, but of impersonation, privacy invasion, manipulation, and coordinated deceit. It included screenshots, audio clips, documents, and now surveillance footage. Every moment, every note, every knock on my door. It all went into the file, the audio of her admitting the plan on my doorstep, the letters with strange language about transition phases, the party invitation. They were all submitted to a civil judge, along with the restraining order request we filed to restrict contact from her, her father, and her mother. The court accepted. A hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. My lawyer said we'd argue psychological trauma, malicious intent, and long-term damage. The judge would decide if a permanent restraining order and damages were appropriate. A few days after the court date was set, her lawyer reached out. She wanted to withdraw all motions and end everything on one condition. I had to agree to a private closure meeting with her, alone. No lawyers, no court, just her and me. I didn't reply. My lawyer did. We declined that weekend. I started looking for places in a different city. I didn't tell anyone where, just bookmarked listings and contacted agents privately. Once the case was done, I didn't plan to stay here. Too many reminders, too many people who thought this was some kind of romance. While packing, I found a box I hadn't seen in years, buried under old linens in a storage bin I hadn't opened since before we were married. Inside was a shoebox filled with old notebooks, not journals, scripts. One had her handwriting on every page, dialogue, scenarios, outcome trees, flowcharts, titles like "If he threatens to leave" and response variants, "If he files legal complaint." It read more like a playbook than a journal. On one page she had written, "If he doesn't collapse emotionally, we try the next level." There were multiple outlines of how to approach grief, how to simulate panic, how long to wait between fake calls. It was all mapped out, timelines, reactions, probabilities. One note simply said, "Endgame, control or reinvention." I took the box to therapy. My therapist read through the first 2 notebooks and didn't speak for several minutes. Then she said she might need to testify. She'd already been documenting the trauma progression, but this was something else, proof of intent. The day before the hearing, her father tried one last move through his legal team. He submitted a request asking that a statement of family unity be read aloud in court. He claimed it was a tradition, a rite of passage, that their family always closed internal disputes with one final reflection. I gave my lawyer the answer, no. No personal statements, no dramatics, no ceremony. They had their chance to speak. Now I get to speak through law. The courthouse was quiet when I arrived. Security check, metal detector, paperwork, routine steps that didn't feel routine at all. I walked into the assigned courtroom and spotted them immediately. Her parents were already seated. Her father sat upright, hands folded, expression unreadable. Her mother stared straight ahead. Neither of them looked at me. Their lawyer sat beside them, flipping through a thick folder of documents. The hearing began right on time. The judge asked both sides if they were ready. Her team responded first and opened with what they called context testimony. They brought in a licensed psychologist. She introduced herself, then began describing the fake death and vanishing act as a structured trust experiment. She claimed the intention was never harm, but growth. She used phrases like controlled exposure to emotional instability and behavioral evaluation under artificial duress. Then came the cross-examination. My lawyer asked one question, who had paid her for her time and report. She said she was contracted through a private consulting firm. When asked which one, she gave the name of a company owned by my wife's father. The room shifted. The judge raised his head. Her lawyer asked for a recess. It was denied. My lawyer played the audio recording next, the one from the security camera at my door. The moment my wife confirmed in her own voice that the entire death had been planned. No emotion, no hesitation, just a flat-toned admission. The judge asked to hear it again, then once more. After that, we submitted the notebooks. I carried the shoebox to the clerk's desk myself. Inside were the pages she'd written, outlines of scenarios, rehearsed dialogues, diagrams, even timed breakdowns of possible reactions. One document was titled, "If he doesn't break," another Phase 2 escalation options. The judge didn't say anything, just flipped through a few pages, then passed the box to a clerk for scanning. Her testimony followed. She walked up in a fitted suit, hair pulled back, and began with a calm, clear statement. She said the entire test was designed from a place of love, that her family had always been protective, that she wanted to be absolutely sure I was the right person to build a legacy with. She described it as calculated but necessary. Midway through her second paragraph, the judge cut in. He asked her plainly, Do you understand the emotional damage you caused by pretending to be dead? She blinked, paused, then began talking again. The judge raised his hand and instructed her to stop speaking. Her father stood next. He defended their choices, said their family culture had always included character tests, that no one in their family had ever married without being vetted through adversity. He framed it like a tradition, a rite of passage. The judge leaned forward and called it what it was, a pattern of coercion disguised as legacy building. He said the court was not in the business of protecting family myths that functioned as emotional manipulation. He granted the restraining order 6 months, no contact from her, her father, or her mother. Any messages would have to go through legal counsel only. Then came the divorce ruling. The judge finalized it immediately. The marriage was dissolved on grounds of emotional entrapment and deception. A clause was added to the judgment, no future contact from her for reconciliation purposes. If she attempted to reach out, it would count as a violation of the order. As the paperwork was being signed, I saw her face shift. She looked toward me for the first time since walking into the room. Her jaw tensed. She opened her mouth to speak. Her lawyer placed a hand on her arm. She stopped. I left without looking back. It was raining when I stepped outside, not heavy, just enough to soak your hair and run down the back of your neck. I didn't move at first, just stood in it. It felt real, grounded, quiet. My lawyer met me downstairs, congratulated me in a low voice. He said this was one of the most disturbing cases of psychological manipulation he'd ever handled. He said, most people break. Most people cave under the pressure before it ever reaches a courtroom. He told me I did everything right. That night, I filled out one last form. It was the transfer of ownership for our former joint property. I mailed it with delivery confirmation, no ceremony, no delay. It was over, legally, emotionally, psychologically. There was nothing left to answer, nothing left to prove. It's been a year. I live in a different state now. New apartment, new job, no ties to anyone connected to her or her family. I never gave a forwarding address. I didn't tell mutual friends where I was going. I packed my car, drove 12 hours and started over in a city where no one knows my last name. That last part is changing too. The paperwork is filed. I'm legally dropping the name I shared with her, something I kept longer than I should have, not because I wanted the connection, but because I didn't want to deal with the forms. Now I want the clean break, the full reset. The court case ended months ago. The restraining order held, the divorce terms stuck. Her family tried one last time to appeal the restraining order's permanence, but the judge denied it without a hearing. The documents were mailed to my lawyer with a single line, no additional commentary permitted from the involved parties. Therapy has continued, but the tone of the sessions has shifted. A few weeks ago, I told my therapist something I hadn't said out loud before, that for months, even after the court hearing, I still caught myself expecting her to walk back through the door, like it had all been a longer setup, like the twist ending hadn't dropped yet. That feeling is gone now. It stopped sometime around the move. I still get flashbacks, nothing dramatic, just sharp moments, a siren, or a hospital billboard, or a missed call from an unknown number. The brain fills in old blanks, but the images don't hold power anymore. They come and go, like echoes in an empty room. Last month, I took a weekend trip alone to a national park 3 hours away. I hiked, camped, stayed off my phone. One night, a hiker from another trail site asked to share firewood. We sat in silence mostly, talked about gear, local trails, weather patterns, nothing deep, nothing forced. It reminded me that human connection doesn't always come with strings or tests or secret games. I wrote a letter the day I came back, to her, not to mail, just to write. It said, "You broke something in me, but you also freed me from ever needing your approval again." I folded it in half and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk. That's where it'll stay. My lawyer reached out again recently. The court finalized a decision on financial restitution. Since a portion of our marital assets had been held under her family's control during the test, the judge ordered partial repayment of legal and therapy costs. A forced liquidation of one of their secondary accounts covered the total. The check cleared 2 weeks ago. The house we shared, what used to be our marital home, is gone now, sold to a young couple expecting their first child. They sent a thank you note for leaving behind a few appliances. I didn't reply. Watching them take the keys didn't trigger anything. I didn't feel sad or angry or relieved, just done. I went back to the city once for final paperwork. While walking near the county building, I saw her across the street. She was entering a cafe with someone else. I turned and walked the other direction. No pause, no tension, just movement. I didn't need to know who she was with or why she was there. That part of my life doesn't belong to me anymore. A few days later, her lawyer sent one last letter, A simple message: she hopes you are healing. My lawyer asked if I wanted to respond. I said no. On the 1-year mark, the same day I got the phone call saying she was dead, I went hiking. I reached the peak just before sunset. No one else was around. At the top, I pulled a folded slip of paper from my coat pocket. I wrote one sentence on it: I lived through it. I tucked it into a crack in the bark of an old pine tree. Then I lit a candle I'd brought in my pack, not for her, for the version of me that had survived long enough to reach this point. I watched the flame for a few minutes, then blew it out and stood up. At the top of that ridge, with the wind in my face and no one around, there was nothing left to figure out. No anger, no fear, no questions waiting to be answered, no test to pass, just stillness. And for the first time in a long time, stillness was enough.